great stuff. Since the election, surprise election for me, I confess. In about half an hour while we were watching on election night, things turned from the Hillary Clinton, Tim Kaine victory that we were expecting to the election of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. And, frankly, our phones have been ringing off the hook, both in the district office and here on the Hill, from so many of you are concerned about the various aspects of the Trump presidency, about his policies, about his plans. And along with many of my colleagues from both sides of the aisle, I have the same concerns. What I don't necessarily have at this point are answers. Any presidential transition involves many more questions than answers. And this is doubly true with the current president-elect because over the course of the campaign, there were very few specific policy proposals. I mean, there was, build the wall and tear up the trade agreements and don't honor Article 5 of NATO, but almost nothing that was actually specific in terms of how he would move forward. I just want to assure you that my values and my priorities, as best I can reflecting yours, they haven't changed. And these are going to continue to reflect the values that we hold dear here in Northern Virginia. So let me just give you a handful of examples. I'm going to continue to oppose plans to privatize and cut Medicare. I'm very, very concerned about the Ryan plan to turn Medicare into a voucher system. It seems to be a huge retreat from our promise to take care of older Americans and their health care needs. And I'm certainly going to do everything I can to oppose the Trump plan to repeal Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Yes, there are definitely things that need to be fixed. The huge premium increase for the private sector just before election certainly didn't help the election that day. But we can't strip health care coverage from the 22 million people that received it under the Affordable Care Act. And many of the important things like the waiver of pre-existing conditions or birth control with no prepayment or copayment are really vital for our American health. Look, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to defend those currently protected by President Obama's DACA and DAPA order. These are our new Americans, often without papers, who are our friends and our neighbors, our classmates, our family members, and they're not criminals, and they should remain welcome in the American community. And I promise you I'm getting so much feedback. It's just absolute terror. The families are going to be ripped apart, and mom or dad's going to be shipped back to Central America while the kids stay. We're going to do everything we can to defend them. And I'm going to continue to stand up to bigotry, public and private. What happened at Maggiano's last night was just completely unacceptable. Many of us and many of you are fearful, not without reason, given the results of the election. But we cannot let the election of Donald Trump legitimize racism, bigotry, homophobia, some of the terrible stuff. We've got to make it clear that bigotry has no place in public life, and that people of all races, religions, origins, orientations, genders, us in Northern Virginia, should feel welcome and honored in our country. I'm going to continue striving for a future where the criminal justice system treats all Americans fairly and equally. And this is something that we really have done together here on the Hill. Bob Goodlatte, who's the Republican chair of the Judiciary Committee, and John Conyers, the legendary Democrat from Detroit, have put together 6 excellent criminal justice bills, which would unload some hundreds of thousands of people from the American prison systems, people locked up for nonviolent crimes. And we've got to do our best to get this passed during the lame duck if possible, or early next year. And I'm going to continue to defend the environment. There's no question that this election is really a major setback for those of us dedicated to a greener, brighter, healthier future for our planet. I'm terrified about the Trump plans to dismantle the EPA. And rumors, just rumors this time, that Sarah Palin may be the Secretary of Interior. But I serve on the Natural Resources Committee. I serve on the Science, Space, Technology Committee, and these are very good places to make sure that we hold the new administration's feet to the fire in terms of protecting our environment. I continue to strive to ensure that working people get a fair shot in the economy. So we're going to continue working for a higher minimum wage. By the way, I was thrilled that every state that had a minimum wage referendum on it this last November, the day we elected Donald Trump, every state that had the referendum passed it. Paid family medical leave, and making sure that if you work overtime, you actually get paid overtime, despite the fact that a judge just this afternoon set aside the Obama overtime rule. and continuing to work to support a regulatory structure that protects Americans from unscrupulous business practices and the worst excesses of the financial industry. Whether it's Wells Fargo creating some hundreds of thousands of fake credit card banking accounts, or the Washington Post story today about the structured settlements on the lead-poisoned people in Baltimore, there's still a lot of regulatory stuff that we need to do to protect people. And almost finally, I really want to continue to support and protect our federal employees. We have the fewest number of federal employees per person that we've had in the last 50 years. And we've gutted the Social Security Administration, the IRS, and others. We get frustrated that our phone calls don't get answered because they continue to strip out the funding for these essential positions. And I know the Newt Gingrich, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump plan for federal employees is not good. And we're going to play defense as best I can. One last thing. I'm very concerned with many people up on the Hill, Democrat and Republican, with the press and the legal community and many members of the public still trying to figure out the overlap between Donald Trump as president and Donald Trump as businessman, the conflicts of interest, the emoluments clause. We've got to do everything we can legally and constitutionally to make sure that our government acts best interest of the people of the United States, unencumbered by private business considerations. Now, I've co-sponsored the Presidential Accountability Act, which would extend federal conflict of interest laws to the president and the vice president. For example, we just can't have our president promoting his hotels in conversations with the folks in India, or promoting his hotels with the diplomatic corps. I'm not hopeful this bill is going to pass in the next couple of weeks, but we have to keep trying, and we must be vigilant. Look, I've already talked much longer than I intended to, but I'd love to hear your